Hello everyone, it's been a week already, so I just wanted to give you a quick update of where I am and how everything's been going so far. I am in West Hartford, Connecticut, and I'm taking my first rest day here, which has been great. And so with my downtime, I'm putting together this video and then, of course, just not being on the bike for a day. Tomorrow I start off and I head towards New York, and week 2. So this is how my bike tour has been going so far. My first day on the road was fairly easy going, although unfortunately I didn't film much. Everything went well and I quickly made my way to my first destination of Kennebunkport, Maine. The second day brought with it plenty of challenges. The first half of my route brought me over long hills. Next up were a series of dirt roads and trails that were not the most bicycle friendly, and I ended up dropping while attempting to cross this bit of water. I finally made it out to the coast, where I battled some headwinds that slowed my pace to a crawl. Needless to say, I was very excited to finish my ride that day. The next day I rode into Brookline, Massachusetts to visit my brother. The morning started off gray and overcast, but quickly turned sunny. Early on I hopped onto a couple of really great bike paths, and before I knew it, I was in the Boston area. Suddenly there were dozens and dozens of other cyclists all around me, and I oddly felt at home as I pedaled my way through the city. I had a great time hanging out with my brother, and the next morning came all too soon. My next destination was Providence, Rhode Island, a 50-mile ride just across the border. I struggled my way out of Brookline's hilly surroundings and passed through 15 miles of relatively quiet roads before I was once again in the city. First going through Pawtucket and then into Providence. There I grabbed a meal with my hosts at a local hole-in-the-wall before grabbing my camera and visiting Providence's Water Place Park. Day 5 saw me crossing over into Connecticut. The ride out of Rhode Island was by far the best portion of my trip. I was able to get onto the Washington Secondary Bike Path that was a nicely paved, flat trail that took me about a dozen miles out into the western part of Rhode Island. Shortly after that, I crossed the Connecticut border, which brought with it short, steep hills throughout the back roads. My GPS also took me on a few questionable bike paths. After a couple more hours of more hills and a few wrong turns, I finished my day in Brooklyn, Connecticut. I started out the next morning, excited to make my way further into Connecticut to see my oldest brother and his family. After fighting a series of long rolling hills on Old Route 6, I was able to get onto a few off-road trails. They were all very flat, a luxury that I thoroughly enjoyed. Before I knew it, I was in the Hartford area, and it was back to the streets for me. It wasn't long before I made it through and left the city for the quieter area of West Hartford. The last few miles took me longer than I had hoped, but in the end it was all worth it. I ended my first week in West Hartford, Connecticut, and so far, so good.